Alright, now let's add reflection to our image. This is my rain layer and this is scene. I expand scene. We don't need reflection for trees or reflection even from sky for now. So I duplicate my original render shot. It is nice to move it up out of the folders. And for now I hide raindrop. Shoot below the rain. Alright, that's correct. Okay, now I invisible the rain group layers. For the reflection, of course you could press Ctrl or Command T. Alright, and right click, simply select flip vertical. I decrease opacity and hold on the shift key and bring down here. Note that because the angle of the camera, this reflection is not correct. So what should we do? First of all, we should find the correct line horizontal reflection. And I think it is something like here. So this is our reflection line for a guide. I remove it. So press Ctrl T. Alright. That warning was about for smart layer. Right click, flip vertical. Decrease opacity a bit. And again, hold on the shift key until touch these corners close together. Now hold on the Control or Command key on Mac. And now you could distort, or better to say skew it. To make sure it is not moving freely, add Shift key too. So Control Shift or Command Shift. And bring the correct place. I think it is about here. It is not so important. Don't worry about accuracy too much. And press Enter. And also we don't need reflection from these parts. So I choose polygonal lasso. Select where you like to add reflection. It is here. Bring back layer, and so I choose foreground color black and background color white. If I press Ctrl or Command backspace, these areas will be white, and in the mask white mean exist, and we made the rest of these mask black. To do that, go to the select, inverse, or press Shift Ctrl or Shift Command I, and Alt or Option backspace or delete to make it black. Alright, Alt click on the mask to see. So this is our reflection. Of course it is too intense, no worries. Also, we don't need some parts of reflections like here, so make sure your mask is selected. Brush, I make it hard, and start removing some parts like here, and even maybe here. We could add a reflection of sky here, but I don't want for now. I will show you. We will add some other process like add vegetation on the ground. Alright. This is our reflection. It is too intense. Also, as you know, usually because of reflection of water and surfaces, it should be distorted. So we could do a lot of distortion method. I think one of the best and simple and fast techniques is going to filter. And we have a lot of options here. I think something like wave, it is fine. Sadly, Photoshop still does not have active live preview, so we have just to check on and on. I decrease the scale. Okay, let's check. It is not bad for first level. Also maybe add more smaller details. So again, filter and distort wave. This time I create wavelength much smaller. Maybe something like that. about between 1 and 6. It is not bad. Amplitude affect too much, so reduce, and also maybe for scale. Let's check before and after. As you see now, we have smaller waves too. That's fine. Also, we could just adjust for horizontal more, so I prefer to add one more in the wave, maybe for horizontal more. Okay, as you see, it is better but too strong. This is our last filters, so I could double click on the name and maybe decrease value a bit, about maybe 20%. Not bad. All right. We could of course use some blending mode like screen and even lighten or even linear dodge and lighter color. But the important thing is here, I don't want to apply it to whole image. So I decrease the opacity. First of all, I remove some parts, again on the mask with brush, a bit soft, something like these parts, we don't need it. Also for here, we could add them manually one by one later, but for now, just because they are too visible, I prefer to remove them. Alright, it is acceptable, I guess. And alright. Now I prefer, instead of having total reflection on the whole surface, adding only some areas as a noise. You could do manually something like, for example, start brush and some brush like dirts, so on, and I start to removing some parts. Note that this is not ideal brush for this, of course, but just as an example. And I could blur it out, select mask, and maybe something like a bit smooth, and start feathering. Let's add more, and maybe more contrast. You see, we could do that manually, something like that. Or I undo that. Allow me to undo them all, alright. Or generate by yourself. I create a layer again. Fill it with any color you like, it doesn't matter, usually black or white. Filter, noise, add noise, any type you like, and I could go to the filter, blur, and blur it out using Gaussian blur. I'm trying to recognize the spots. I know our file, it is too big. Again, image adjustment and using threshold to generate some spots you like. Slowly add, not too fast. You could simply use arrow keys. Maybe something like that. It is not bad. I adding like that and blur it out again because I want to make some nice effects. I repeat again with threshold. You could even use, instead of threshold this time, levels or curves, image adjustment levels, or press Ctrl or Command L and increase contrast and move any places you like. Alright, now we have some spots. I press Ctrl or Command T, rotate, because I think this angle and part it is better. Hold on the Alt or Option key, hold on the Control key to deform it. And note that if I set blending mode on something like lighten or screen, you will see the spot exactly where it is shown. So hold on the control and try to create some kind of perspective effect. Maybe something like that. It is not bad. Alright, you could expand it, of course, your whiteness. Press Ctrl or Command L, you could expand it again. And I think still we need more depth, so press Ctrl or Command T. And I prefer to make it flip horizontal. Maybe these parts are better. Not too much different, but the spot I expect to show. To add more spot, of course, you could hold on the Alt or Option key and duplicate. Something like that. Control T. I deform it. Alright. And I could remove by eraser any areas I don't want. Allow me to make it harder. Don't worry about the rest of spots. It is fine. Press Ctrl or Command E to merge these spots together. And how we could make them as selection. Of course, you could use something like select by color, like magic wand, or select and using color range. But because usually they're getting jagged and not so detailed, so temporarily go to the normal. And we don't need the rest of that, so I press Ctrl A to select them all, Ctrl or Command C to copy. To make selection based on white and black, go to the channel, create a new channel here like layers and paste it. I move it back to the original place. And with black brush, allow me to select normal brush. Oops. It is eraser, so brush. General brush, doesn't matter. Start removing these spots. Even we could blur them out here. They are too crisp here. Okay. Or simply go to the filter, blur, and I prefer to use two types of blur. First, add the Gaussian blur, but a small value. Alright. Usually because they have perspective and horizontal, so we need motion blur. Go to the filter, blur, and motion blur. With zero angle, see, this is much more better than normal. I think it is fine. Now hold on the Control or Command key and click on this channel thumbnail. Our white information converted to selection. Go back to RGB, layer, we have this here. Now we need to only keep these parts. So if I invert my selection, note that we have these parts as selection. Allow me to bring brush to show you. Only these parts are as selection, so we need exactly reverse. Go to the select, inverse, or press Shift Control or Shift Command I. Make sure you're on the mask with pure black. Alt or Option backspace. See what happened? Now we left only these parts. Right? Okay. You see? Now we have some parts of this. Of course, you could use with brush to adjusting. For example, I make it softer and smaller. Start removing some hard edges. This is very great reflection. Now you could decrease opacity. Maybe something like that. Allow me to bring back my rain layers. And you could adjust now the opacity amount you like. And because this is mask, so no worries. I could go to the filter, blur, and motion blur again. And as you see, I could readjust these reflections any mode I like. Maybe a bit less. And you can decrease opacity to make something like that. This is mask. You could anytime add or remove with brush. For example, I choose white, and as you see, it is adding. So no worries if you like to connect them or even use other types of brush, something like, for example, I don't know, this type. Let's check to see, is this working? Yeah, it is not bad, but flow or opacity is much, so I decrease the flow. And as you see, I could start blending reflection any parts I like. Maybe 30% is enough. So this is before and this is after. We don't need this layer anymore. Last step here is usually reflection have more intense of light. So I could go to the image, adjustment and curves, or press Ctrl or Command M and slowly increase light intensity. It is more looks natural. In the next video we will add some mist and fog effects into our scene.